Good morning. I just finished a CNN interview, and I figured that might as well make it a twofer and do a brief update here for my Substack. So, the first thing I wanted to mention is if you haven't seen my wife Rachel's excellent article, frankly, quite powerful, I very much encourage you to read it. It's titled Courage is the Antidote. It's a pretty powerful commentary on the fact that we are in the midst of a authoritarian takeover. It looks different than what's represented on TV or what we might see reflected in other countries. But it's kind of here with the targeting of opponents, infringement on First Amendment rights. So I'll let that one stand right there. Again, strongly encourage you to take a look at it. It's free to all folks that want to take a look at it. The substance of the CNN interview with John Berman was in preparation for the UNGA, the UN General Assembly, kind of an annual ritual where world leaders come together and discuss the various immediate crises. So, certainly the war in the Middle East, Israel Hamas war, the Russia Ukraine war, other potential flashpoints, as well as long term enduring challenges, whether that's doctrine around AI revolution, cyber security, climate change, all these types of things are in place. One of the key topics, of course, will be the recognition of a handful of states already recognized the state of Palestine, which is really rhetorical at this point. There is really no viable state at this point. But it's a rebuke against Netanyahu and his conduct of this war. We should remember that this is all a consequence of this heinous attack by Hamas on the state of Israel on October 7th, several years ago, a couple years ago. But it's more of a commentary on the fact that Netanyahu has not attempted to wind down this war, conduct his operations to root out terrorism, weaken Hamas, and instead is seen as a bad actor perpetuating war. These countries have now kind of resolved to recognize the state of Israel, and it's almost like history coming full circle. In 1948, when the state of Israel emerged, it was on the premise of a UN General Assembly resolution for a two-state solution. Um, but what ended up spoiling that idea was that the Palestinian and Arab leadership of the day refused to allow the state of Israel to exist, and launched a war in 1948, and then a series of wars to try to eradicate Israel. And Israel was proven too powerful. Now, generations later, there's a recognition of the aspiration of the state of a two-state solution and a Palestinian state. Again, not particularly meaningful. I could understand the rejection of this premise by Israel because of the connection to October 7th, but it's a commentary on Netanyahu as a bad actor and Trump as unreliable more than anything else. I think if you read the diplomatic tea leaves. The other thing is, of course, the Russia-Ukraine war. It's a strange place we find ourselves in. 3.5 years on, Russia still believes it could win this war. It believes it could out escalate the West. It could pressure the West through some saber rattling, through infringement on the sovereignty of European states and NATO member states, threatening them and getting them to back off from support for Ukraine. This is now a series of violations of airspace, whether it's Romania, Poland, in a significant number of drones violating that airspace, three Russian fighter aircraft operating within Estonian airspace, and the best that could be mustered is you know a challenge to that as NATO launching its aircraft to escort the Russian aircraft out of the territory. Unfortunately, this is likely to be perceived as a weak response by Putin and something that's going to continue to encourage further escalation, further support. In response, there are a number of different actions that could be taken. If we recall back almost a decade ago, when the Russians violated Turkish airspace for seconds, the Turks shot down that Russian aircraft. It was a close air support aircraft, and the Russians never violated Turkish airspace again. That's a robust response, didn't result in escalation. And I think the fact is that the Europeans have a lot of latitude to respond more aggressively. Certainly, one of the prescriptions I'm calling for is expanding a no-fly zone, an air policing mission to Western Ukraine and shooting down Russian drones in Western Ukraine as a signal that Russia's aggressive actions, are producing consequences contrary to Russia's interests. So I think that's a valid response. And then, frankly, a clear warning that the Europeans will not tolerate this, including these kinds of shoot downs, certainly on drones, completely viable and non-manned aircraft are a different threshold. So that's something that the Europeans need to start taking a look at. There's a good possibility of, I think, an excellent possibility of Trump and Zelensky meeting on the margins of UNGA. This is now kind of a regular opportunity for those leaders to talk. Not a huge amount of high expectations out of this. It looks to me like the best case scenario is Trump kind of continues to stay on sides over the course of the last week or so after Russia's violations of European sovereignty. Trump has declared that he would protect the Baltic states and NATO and Poland and live up to his obligations for NATO. That's I think kind of the minimum expectation. I think the fact that the U.S. is going to continue to support Ukraine with intelligence sharing and weapons sales, even if it's at a kind of price gouging level, is a way to continue to sustain U.S. support for as long as possible, while the Europeans kind of get their act together and ramp up. So those are the general expectations. I'll have more on this. My twin brother Eugene Vinman is in Ukraine at the moment today, actually, for a bilateral congressional delegation. So I'm sure he's going to have some interesting kind of observations. The other things I'd want to mention are, frankly, more about domestic politics. I am, deeply concerned about the leveraging of the this, heinous Charlie Kirk assassination as a bout and an escalation of political violence to target Trump's enemies, his opponents. Certainly, I'm on that enemies list, but there are a number of folks that Trump wants to get even with, and also silence opposition speech, targeting, for instance, Jimmy Kimmel, and threatening to withhold or take away uh, communications licenses to coerce these corporate entities to bow to the president's whims. It's a clear and abhorrent violation of the First Amendment, which is specifically written. It's not all speech. If it's companies can have purview to put together kind of restraints, but it's been intentionally to protect the government from infringing on private citizens' speech. So it's exactly what the president is doing, and it's pretty awful. And frankly, it has me it had me a bit depressed last week, watching this unfold and watching these big players, too big to fail, right? Will bail these companies out, but they're also the biggest companies are the most facile. They're the ones that are going to bend because they'll argue that they have a lot to lose, and it's pretty disgusting that our major law firms, our major media companies, universities, corporations are so willing to really undermine their long-term brand. They're so eager to bend to avoid the potential repercussions and lawsuits, which they would win in order to, keep their profit margins high while sacrificing our system, our system of laws that everybody is subject to the same laws, and that if there's a violation of those laws, then you take it to the courts. So it's a pretty ugly development. Um, I'm also pretty disgusted, while finding it completely unacceptable to have this proliferation of political violence, and having Trump tout and glorify political violence against his opponents, that we're willing to honor somebody like Charlie Kirk, who's attacked me personally on at least 23, 24 occasions by my count, and fabricated lies. He's done so to scores of his opponents under the banner of free speech, which he's entitled to do. But making up lies against his enemies is pretty disgusting, and also attacking our most vulnerable population, whether it's immigrants or minorities, to be able to grift and be able to kind of sell his hate and market his hate. Then this person was honored with flags at half staff, the president attending his funeral, and elevated in a kind of disgusting way. And Congress, to a certain extent, was complicit. And if you watched Fox News, they said that Congress passed the honoring Kirk, Charlie Kirk Act. It was the act itself was a condemnation of political violence, but that's how it's being billed to the right media space. So pretty ugly. Vaccine conspiracies, another ugly development, whether that's here in my home state of Florida, or across the United States, with regards to eliminating or limiting access to COVID vaccinations, or um, looking to attack childhood vaccinations. I think now there's an effort underway, and Rachel will be discussing this, to tie Tylenol use to autism, blaming women for taking Tylenol during pregnancies. Pretty absurd. I mean, you know, this is where we're headed with this particular absurd Health and Human Services Secretary in this administration. And then this firing, kind of back on the topic of targeting opponents, of a prosecutor that was unwilling to fabricate evidence and charge the president's political opponent. So pretty dark moment here in the U.S. Unfortunately, it's going to get worse. The next opportunity to really push back on these awful trend lines is decisive wins in the gubernatorial elections in Virginia. So my former home state, folks need to turn out to vote in New Jersey and some of these special elections, because decisive wins in these states, could send the message to anybody, any Republican that's in a Republican R+5 district, that they're vulnerable. We need these things to be wide and yawning victories, so that these politicians understand that their political lives are at stake, and triggering their sense of self-preservation. And based on that, maybe folks start to separate. There's a handful of folks that are already doing that. Senator Tillis, Congressman Bacon, a number of different, on specific issues. But we need wholesale departures, not rubber stamps for the president's agenda, in order to try to turn the corner and maybe have an easier 2020, end of 2025, 2026, before we get to midterm elections and a Democratic majority. So that's the picture, the way I see it. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your support, and looking forward to catching you here in the near future. Thanks.